Okay, morning all. We have started this morning with the workshop, and I understand I was a little bit late, but we did have an opening prayer, so thank you to who opened. We do have some apologies this morning, and our thoughts do go out to our chair, who had an unfortunate injury last night and in a bit of pain, but it sounds like she's in the best place to start fixing that. So our thoughts with her. So apologies from our chair, Hinawai Ormsby, and Councillor Jock McIntosh. We do have Councillor Williams online, who's not feeling so well either, so he may be just more in a listening role today, but thank you for making the effort, Councillor Williams. Any notices? No. Conflict of interest declarations today? No. Confirmation of the minutes of Regional Council meeting held 24th of July. Do we have any no amendments? We'll take those as read. Could I have a mover for those? Councillor Van Beek. Seconder, Councillor Sears. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Carried. Right. We just have one item on the agenda today, and that is the Havelock North Streams Flood Resilience Funding. I guess who are we going to?
I'm happy to start off, and then I'll hand over to the team through you, Chair. Councillors, this item was held over from your last regional council meeting when we received the flood review, and we're going to clearly run out of time to do this item as well. I have provided this item to the Chief Executive of Hastings District Council in advance, so they are aware of it and that it is coming. You may remember back to September, October last year when this council signed off on the North Island weather event agreement with the Crown. And at that point, each of the councils that entered into that agreement essentially signed for things that were, if you like, in their swim lane, and flood mitigation and flood protection being ours. One of the areas that was included in that flood protection work was resilience for a set of streams in Havelock North. What became very clear subsequently is that actually those are stormwater systems, at least in part, managed by Hastings District Council. So they have taken on the delivery of the flood resilience work there. A lot of that is around clearance of obstruction and getting a better stream flow on site, and they've done a great job of advancing that together with the communities. There are around 38 properties that are currently sitting in Category 2C. In terms of the funding of the total project, which was allocated $10 million, broadly that's a 75-25% split between the Crown and the Regional Council needing to provide the local share. And this paper really takes you through how that local share might be rated. We have had a useful but robust conversation with Hastings District Council around how that might be done, and this paper sets out the potential options for rating for that scheme, but being clear that we won't be the organisation delivering on that scheme maintenance. That's done as a stormwater job by Hastings District. And with that introduction, Chair, I might hand to Susie to take you through any further detail, particularly to get into rating models, and then come back to you for questions.
Thank you, Nick. Just to add to what Dr. Nick has just outlined. I think there's some really important points here that slightly differentiate this work compared to the other Cat 2 work that we're executing, which is part of the reason, rationale as to why this has taken some time to land in terms of the progression of that and how we will rate for that, and part of the reason why this wasn't included in the long-term plan discussions that we had whilst we landed on the appropriate mechanism to fund. The key with the Havelock North Stream is that this is not a capital asset. It's not an asset of ours. It's not an asset either of actually Hastings District Council. It's considered stormwater drainage. And so that complicates the equation when you are talking about funding for capital purposes versus operational purposes, and that is articulated in some of the options that we'll go through. So HBRC currently doesn't have an asset in Hastings, nor do we have a maintenance program. We actually have nothing. So to go forward and fund this piece of work, we need to both establish the appropriate mechanism, how we will rate that, and where material, or if different from our current revenue and financing policy, we will need to make a change to that. So there are some pieces of the puzzle that, as an outcome of today, we will need to work through how we either consult on that and what changes we subsequently have to make. What we have outlined to you is some of the risks around this. With us rating, there is going to be complication in the community around, well, hold on, what is this work? Why are you rating us? So the resultant rating of this is likely to create some confusion in the community. The other thing I do want to highlight is some of the options that we have come up with. What we've tried to do is align a potential option with what would Hastings do. So Nick has alluded to the conversation as to previously if we hadn't rated for this and Hastings would have, how would have they rated for that if we had progressed? So we have taken that into consideration in the options. I'm going to hand you over to Chris now to just talk through those options. We have provided you with our normal tables of distribution, some of the counts of what those ratepayers are just leading into what the outcome might be.
Kia ora, councillors. I think just in terms of the options, we've put together 3 options there. Option 1 was looking at doing it 100% across the general rate. Obviously, the big issue around there is areas in Central Hawke's Bay, Wairoa, other areas paying for something that is specifically in Havelock North there. In terms of, as Susie mentioned, rating as close as possible to how Hastings District Council would rate this. Their rate for stormwater clearance is through their general rate, which is based on a land value to all Hastings District Council ratepayers. They do have 2 rating areas that they use in there. We don't have that set up in our rating system, so we would propose that we would just do it to all Hastings District ratepayers as per in our rating system. The third option is to follow something similar to our existing rating methodology for all other flood resilience schemes, which is 70% to the impacted parties, which would be Hastings District Council ratepayers, and 30% to the general rate. The reason we didn't have that as our preferred option going into there is that when you look at what we are doing here, we are not creating an asset of ourselves. We are effectively giving a grant to Hastings District Council to support the funding from the government to build and improve their scheme in there. The other side of all of the options is whether it's we rate it over 1, 3, 5 or more years. Our preferred option, looking at the tables, rating over 1 year is quite a significant cost in some respects in there, which sort of discounted that factor. However, going 5 years or more starts spreading the repayment of that initial funding quite out a lot, especially when we're not creating an asset or anything. So we thought the appropriate rating timeline was 3 years, which sort of reflects the time that it'll take to build that scheme, get that all up and running, give the grants to Hastings District Council, and then that stops and Hastings District Council can start rating for their maintenance of that new scheme or the improvements in there or the replacement of the improvements, and you're not doubling up on rates to the Hastings District Council ratepayers. So I think that takes us through most of the paper and we're open for questions.
Good stuff. Yeah. Questions? Councillor Harding.
Kia ora, Chair. So I'm just trying to understand this question about whether we're creating new assets or not, and without understanding the scope of works, it's hard to analyse that. One of the issues is potentially the size of the detention dam at the top of the Mangaro. Is that intended to change as a result of the work? So is that going to is that storage capacity going to be increased?
I'll ask Mr. Dolly to join us, but also noting that those decisions lie with the district council as to how they run that scheme, because we are simply providing the grant of $2.5 million or so as agreed under the NIWI process. All the technical pieces of work are being done by Hastings District.
That's correct. So whether capital assets are being created or not, or the detail of those assets are not material to this decision, because it is a grant to Hastings District Council. So I can be very clear that the Regional Council will receive no asset base or no operational responsibility as a function of this, because Hastings District Council already have the responsibility of operating and maintaining the Havelock North stream. So my understanding of the scope is that it's really about conveyance. It's the discharge from the dam that ameliorates the flow within the channel, and it's about ensuring that the capacity of that channel is a suitable match for the dam. So that's the work that Hastings will be doing.
Okay, my problem with that answer is that on the one hand, we're saying in the paper that these are operational works and so they should be funded no more than 5 years. On the other hand, we're saying we actually don't have no control over what the works are, and we can't actually say whether they're CapEx or operational.
That's correct. So what we're saying is it is a grant to Hastings. So it's not a capital expenditure on our books. We're creating no asset ourselves. So it is a grant to an organisation who may create an asset, but again, the detail, and I think they're still working through the detail of precisely what all the interventions are, will be worked through their project. They're running the project, they're delivering the project, they're responsible for the financial performance of the project. This is simply a grant, which is the local contribution.
Yeah, I don't accept all of that. I think that if we're creating, I need to be, thinking about consistency with other category Cat 2 responses, where a capital asset is being created, if that's funded as capital. We're saying capital assets may be created, but we're not looking into that. Overall, this seems to me to be a pretty messy workaround to a pretty messy situation, and maybe every outcome is going to be suboptimal, and because of that crossover. But it's just riddled with inconsistencies that I'm not blaming on staff, but probably more of the whole situation where we have we have made an agreement with the Crown to have work done on assets that are not ours, and we're trying to make the best of it. But it's a muddle. It's a horrible muddle. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Roadley.
Thank you, Chair. So if we accept that it is a grant going to Hastings, I understand that, do we have a usual structure for when we give a grant around how the cost structure works, whether 90-10, 70-30, that part of it, and is this in line with our usual how we manage a grant?
So
Through you, Chair, anything that we do as a grant to other organisations is normally funded through operational expenditure from the rates take or other funding source for that year. So we would fund it within 1 year. What we're looking at with this grant is that the work is unlikely to happen just in 1 year. It will be over a couple, 2 or 3 years. So what we're looking at here in terms of the preferred option of funding over 3 years would be in line with the payments that would be made, the grants that would be made to Hastings District Council over those 3 years. So it is in line with how we would rate for any types of grants that we currently do.
So just to follow up, so our usual, if we're giving a grant to another organisation, it would be 100% general rate funded?
It would depend on the activity.
So there isn't like a, this is how we do JET grants, it's specific to the project?
Yeah.
Right, can I have a second question? Thank you, Chair. Given that we will be handing over the cash, Hastings District Council will be doing the work around it. Who does the engagement with the community around that piece so that the community understand we're not running the cutter on it, we're not to blame, and we won't be getting the 50,000 emails about
Yes.
whether it's good, bad, or otherwise? I hope it's outstanding,
Yeah,
but
Two things to answer that, Councillor Roadley. So HDC have engaged an external contractor to do all of that work, all of the community meetings. They are very active in that Havelock North community space at the moment with newsletters and interaction that is separately documented and outlined through the HDC website and very active. We link to that via our NIWI program in terms of having oversight of what they're doing. Can I just be really clear though, is when we talk about a grant to HDC, what we are saying is it's not, here you go, here's 2.4 million HDC. HDC currently are bearing the costs of all of that work. They are paying for them. What is happening, similar to what's happening in their NIWI program, there is a monthly or quarterly submission to the Crown for these are our eligible costs, can you reimburse? And so at that point of acceptance, it will be reimbursed from Crown money and reimbursed 25% from HBRC. So it's actually ultimately all end up at $2.5 million that we give, but it's not an upfront payment, it's an actual reimbursement up to.
can I just add that the newsletters that they're doing around the Havelock North thing are outstanding. They're so good.
Great, thank you. Councillor Curtin.
Just a couple of questions. The time frame, is it in terms of the actual expenditure, just following on from your last comment, what is the likely time frame for the work that's proposed? Can we spread the actual drawdown over a couple of years?
It will be spread over the next 3 years.
It's over 3 years, is it? Okay, so it's not 2.5 this year. It's good to know. And going to my colleague's question on funding thereof, the paper considers funding from rates. Have we looked at other options for funding, such as our family silver?
Purely. Okay. Purely into rates.
As you will appreciate, we've done a year of looking at our investment strategy and why we should not tap into the silver. Paying for operational spend in the Havelock North Stream is something that would be my advice that we certainly most would never look at using Crown Silver for.
Because that's a community clamour has been, we've got all this money, why don't we just sort of do this to
Yes.
it? So you had considered that as an option, but you've said let's not do that.
Similar to how we are treating the other NIWI program, this needs to follow similar principles of what's happening.
And it was following the NIWA program, it would be coming out of NIWA.
Possibly.
But it's not.
Can you repeat that, sorry?
It's not coming out of the NIWA money, is it?
Sorry, I'm confused now.
Now we-
So this is NIWI, what we're talking
Yes,
about. Havelock
yes.
North is part of the
Are
NIWI
we
program.
having to top that up because there's not enough money in there?
Their portion.
No, it's the committed portion. So what we're talking about here is our committed portion to
40
the
million.
total NIWI program. Yeah.
Yes, but we've put, ours we've allocated 40 million, but we need 42.5.
It's within that original 44 million that
Yeah.
is part of the whole agreement.
But through the 3-year plan, we didn't include the 2.5.
So that's my point, is, are we've gone and consulted on 40 million, but we're needing 42.5,
Sure, yeah.
no?
That's correct?
Yep,
That's
that's
correct?
So we're needing to put 2.5, and that's why we're doing this.
Yes, correct.
It's not part of the portion.
So what I said earlier, once we've decided on how to rate, the consequences of this decision will be another $2.5 million spend required in our next annual plan. As a result of that, we will trigger, possibly, depending on outcome, the significance and engagement policy and need to consult on how this is rated for and the collection of that.
But it won't be 2.5 in one annual plan, will it? Because you said it'll be over
Be
several.
spread. Yeah.
Thank you, councillor Sears. And then I'll come to you, Martin.
Thank you, Chair. That's right, depending on the time spread, it will depend how this falls as to whether or not it triggers a consultation, won't it? So it would be sensible to look at structuring it in a way that that didn't trigger it, I'm assuming, yeah. I just want to just run a few things down really clear in my mind. The Havelock dams and the conveyancing channels, the whole system's owned by HDC, and the work, this $10 million work, as I understand it, is to increase the capacity through the conveyancing system of the water from the dam, call it stormwater. Picking up on Councillor Harding's questions around oversight of it, we would not in any general, well, in any sense, I'm really asking Chris this, have oversight or oversight of a stormwater system of any of our district councils and how they do that in terms of engineering or their works, is that correct?
Correct. So the only oversight that we would have as an organisation is through consenting authority, whether they required any consents to undertake or operate. That's the only oversight that this organisation would have. We have no operational oversight, so to speak.
Exactly. So am I right that we are creating a loan to Hastings District Council for them to complete the work as they would under any of their normal circumstances? It doesn't mean that we have any interest or financial interest in the actual work that's being done, and all our consenting processes and our oversight of those will continue as normal. So if there were any breaches to any of those, we're not compromised in any way in terms of our regulatory process. Is that correct?
That's correct. So lock, stock
Yeah.
and barrel is delivered by Hastings District Council. This is simply a grant of cash
Exactly.
towards the project.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Williams, online. No?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, sorry about the delay there. Just trying to get the device organised. Look, I'm really struggling with this one, and I don't think it's just my current state of mind. But I just wanted to test paragraph 5 of the paper, where it says that under the contract with the government. Of course, I'm struggling to get up there now. Bear with me. This council needs to guarantee the local share portion and honour the local share contribution in the agreement. Is that an interpretation of the contract, or is that exactly what the contract says? And does the contract say in the result that we have to rate for it? or could this be an underwrite scenario?
That is an interpretation of the contract, is that HBRC must ensure that funding is available, but not necessarily where that's come from. So sorry, however that's written, possibly is taken a different meaning for yourself. I'll have to get the original wording and share that if you'd like that. But we must ensure that funding is put in place to fund these projects. How we get that funding or where that funding comes from doesn't necessarily have to be HBRC.
And just through you, Chair, to add to that comment, I've had a very explicit conversation with the Crown and with Hastings District Council. So the Crown will not release its share unless that local share is guaranteed. I've had a number of conversations with Hastings District about whether they would provide that local share via us and a back-to-back agreement. That has been declined. So in order for that work to go ahead and for those residents to move from Category 2C to 1, ultimately that local share, there is no one else who's able to fund it apart from this council. So that's the situation.
Well, thank you, Nick, but I don't think that is the situation. There is another entity that's able to fund it, and it's the entity that owns the asset and is going to do the work. And I just think we're being strong-armed here because of that clause into something that neither party anticipated. And I guess I struggle conceptually for an asset that we don't own, where we don't do the work, and we're being asked to rate according to the Hastings District Council model. It is, as Councillor Harding pointed out, a messy workaround. And if I were to ask you this question, give me 3 good reasons why we should do this.
I don't disagree with your comment about there potentially being another entity to fund it. In terms of the contractual arrangement, it is between the Crown and this council. It lies with us unless that third party is willing to contribute. My view about why we've put this paper up is ultimately that community is looking to move from 2C to 1. The work was in good faith agreed to back in, I think it was August last year. If this council doesn't provide that local share, then that work doesn't proceed, essentially. And so that community would be left in a very difficult position. And Hastings District Council, I think, would come to us to say, well, the contract is signed by HBRC for lots of good reasons at the time. So go ahead and honour it.
Yeah, well, I understand, Nick, and I don't want to enter debate here, but it can be honoured by the District Council that owns these works, rating its own ratepayers rather than us sending the bill. It's doing the work. It's putting us in a position where we can't provide the guarantee because the party that owns the asset isn't prepared to rate its ratepayers for its own delivery of the work. So we've been backed into a corner here, and I don't understand the merit of that in substantive terms. So anyway, I'll leave it there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll come back to you, Councillor Harding. Just to look at the actual ratepayer getting rated here, whether it's us or HDC, as Councillor Williams was alluding to. Chris, one of the things you talked about was Hastings would have 2 general rate areas. Now I'm going to assume is that urban versus rural that we don't have, and so if Hastings was going to rate this, it would be just the urban ratepayer. Is that what you were saying when you said that?
No, the Hastings Revenue and Financing Policy has this being funded by general rate. It's in the paper there. So stormwater stuff is funded by their general rate. Their general rate is allocated on two differentials, one for a rating area around Hastings and in the urban stuff, and one for a rating area for the wider Hastings district.
Okay, so, yeah,
So everyone would still be getting a portion of the costs here through their general rate.
so what we're proposing through our rates is, it's probably not exactly the same, but it's
It's the
as
closest we
similar
can
as we
do.
get. Okay, thank you. I'll just check no other councillors got any queries before, okay, councillor Harding?
Kia ora, Chair. Look, this is probably a question for our Chief Executive, Nick. Have you given consideration to attaching conditions to this proposed grant to ensure compliance with the consent conditions for operation of the Havelock North streams drainage system, given that there has been strong concern, and particularly in the Havelock North community, about the non-adherence to consent conditions in the past, deficiencies with maintenance of that scheme, which may or may not have led or contributed towards the flooding outcomes, and in the context of there having been no independent review of the operation of that system during the flooding. Thank you.
The short answer from me is I think the back-to-back agreement that we would have to sign with Hastings District Council will purely be about the delivery of getting that site from 2C to 1. The compliance work that we do, which we have done around the dams and the stream, is a separate issue, and I don't think we could build it into this contract, would be my view.
Chair, if I could just have a supplementary question then. Outside of that then, what is Regional Council's intention around ensuring compliance, ongoing compliance with the consents for operation of those, the Havelock North?
I'll ask Ms Brunton to address that. I think we have a regular compliance schedule for those locations.
Thanks, Nick. Councillor, Hastings District Council holds consents, as we know, for detention dams in Havelock North, in particular the Mangaro Detention Dam, with a discharge permit. They are subject to ongoing compliance monitoring by HBRC. You will know, as a result of a significant number of lagoimas that this organisation has been filling, that there was a period in time prior to Cyclone Gabriel where HBRC were unable to undertake annual compliance monitoring checks. However, the dam was still the Mangaro Detention Dam, and there's two or more actually. Hastings District Council was still getting those independently assessed by an engineer. It's well documented that there is some maintenance work that they need to do and have not done on their dams. They have provided to Council, to HBRC, an action plan for that maintenance work and are currently and actively working on that now. We have undertaken monitoring of those last year. We've undertaken monitoring of them again this year and will continue to do so now that the compliance team has got the resources to do so. It was largely down to staff resources. We are working very closely with HDC, who know that they've got some work to do in order to meet full compliance, and that's where it goes and will continue to be monitored by this council.
Thank you. That's quite a reassuring answer to what has been an ongoing problem, which unfortunately didn't receive the same light of day through independent review as the rest of the assets that failed as a result of Cyclone Gabrielle. So it's good to at least have some assurance that on this side of the regulatory table that we're doing what we can now to ensure safe operation and the successful operation of those schemes. Thank you.
They're not picking up on any more questions. Councillor Sears?
Chair, I'd be happy to move the recommendations, including 4.2, that we do take this on and provide the local share with 100% targeted rate to the Hastings District ratepayers on land value.
Thank you for that. Do we have a seconder?
Which one?
Oh, did you say how many years?
Yeah.
The recommendation was 5, wasn't it?
Or three.
3. Yes, with 3 years.
Okay, clarify with 3 years. Do we have a seconder for
I'll second it.
Councillor Curtin? Thank you. Would you like to speak?
Thank you. I pick up on comments particularly by Councillor Williams, and I do understand that there is some complications and some muck-arounds, as Councillor Harding said, it's complicated outcomes to complicated problems, but actually, primarily, our community is asking us to get on with the work to complete the extraordinary contribution from the Crown of 75%, with our 25% top up from mainly Regional Council in this instance. I don't see any reason to push back on this. At the end of the day, these are all the same ratepayers, and for a number of reasons, this is the most sensible way forward, and I really think we need to move on with it so the work can continue and the communities feel safer that the work's being done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In looking at this, it is a very messy workaround. Let's not gild this, and it's a bit of a bailout as well from some pretty average performance from our colleagues. But I won't go there. I'm just a little bit wavering. My colleague has pointed out that through the consultation process we may alter this, but given the circumstances, the impacts on the region, I was tempted to go to 4.3, so 70-30 split, so spread the love right across the whole region to an extent in the same way that we have with other schemes. But on the face of it, those ratepayers in the Hastings District will pay. That seems okay. Maybe we'll be twisted to change our mind. The other element to it is that maybe we do actually have to look at other ways of funding this. It's a big burden on Hastings ratepayers straight up. Maybe we have to look at some innovative ways around this. But that may come out in consultation. We'll just see. But for the moment, very reluctantly,
Your name's there?
slowly putting a hand up to this option.
Thank you, Councillor Curtin. Councillor Harding?
Kia ora, Chair. Look, I borrow all of my colleagues' words just there, and it will be with immense reluctance that I support recommendations in 4.2 in particular, which is the 100% targeted funding for ratepayers based on land value, with all of the contradictions that this organisation rating on land value brings to the table, and also recognising, as we've heard, actually that this is the closest that we can approximate with our systems to the effect that would be if Hastings District Council had done the honourable thing and picked this up. However, I do also note that in fact there is likely to be a relatively disproportionate effect on the non-urban Hastings ratepayer as a result of that. And I will be very keen to find other options, as will other of our colleagues, before we get to annual plan, to do the very best we can for Hastings.
Thank you. Councillor Williams?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Look, I've actually got another question before I can vote. I just need to understand, I meant to ask it before. It says at one point in the paper that this is a significant situation or a significant decision that's going to require appropriate notification and consultation. And then that's at paragraph 31, and then it says at 2 that it's not as significant and we can exercise its discretion without conferring. I'm a little bit confused about what happens next. Are we voting on a proposal to go to consultation here for next year's annual plan? Are we voting on a proposal to go through consultation by way of an immediate amendment to our long-term plan or to an amendment to our RFP? What exactly is the process here and over what time period?
Through you, Chair, and I'll just check with Ms Cull if I've got this right or wrong, but I understand that it's not significant as of today because you will trip significance when you adopt your annual plan, and the proposition is to go out to consult as part of the annual plan process.
Next year?
Yeah, next year. What this essentially does is it provides surety to Hastings District Council and those ratepayers that we are going to provide that local share. You may, as a result of consultation on the annual plan, change the way that you have decided to rate for it. Or as councillor,
so you mean
another
just to get it over the line.
Yeah,
this provides surety that we're going to consult on this next year. Is that that's effectively what it does?
Sorry, I missed the question.
Consult on how to rate.
Agreeing to
It provides surety that we're going to put it into our annual
Yes,
plan
absolutely.
consultation.
Yes, absolutely,
Right.
councillor.
Councillor Roadley?
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to follow up on Councillor Harding's point that the lion's share of the cost is going to fall on our rural residents in the Hastings district. You'd have to argue whether they're actually beneficiaries of that service. I guess they are because they use the town. But I would be interested in the difference between sharing it out into the 5 years, across the 5 years, as opposed to the 3 as proposed in the motion. Would it reduce the likelihood of triggering that? No. If it was over the 5 years?
I can answer that. So anything above 1 year is going to trigger an LTP amendment.
Oh.
So 1 year, I think we could say it was a special rate and we would just do it and not change our revenue and financing policy. But if it's 3 or 5, we would have to do an LTP.
Regardless.
Yep.
And so at the point when we're doing that work in preparation for the annual plan next year is when we'll debate the 3 to 5 years. That's the time that will be. The recommendation 4.2, it still leaves it open, or are we selecting 1, 3 or 5?
Selecting, I think.
Or does that lock us in?
You're all lucky you got a friendly chair today. And you allow questions during debate.
Haven't got a funny chair.
A friendly chair. I think that the thing today is we're deciding 3, but in the consultation, we could put the 1 to 5.
But still
and
there.
then we come back and decide then.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes. So is that your debate?
Very friendly, very friendly. Could I just supplementary on that?
Or you're pushing it now.
Can we, in the consultation, can we similarly consider other funding options? If this is specific to 100% targeted rate, could we in fact go out with options, other options?
Yeah, I think, the process from now is for us to have a much closer look at this, potentially working with Hastings District Council to ensure that the way that we're doing it is aligned the most to how they would do it. I don't know the intricacies of their rating system, so that's something that we'd need to see if we could actually, if there was a simple way that we could align it even closer to how they would rate or other options into there, and they would be able to be brought into the consultation for the annual plan.
We've just got a suggestion from our governance team.
So, councillors Sears and Curtin, would you consider if I add the word, so it says agrees to the following being included, and put in the 2025-26 annual plan consultation, so that it's not saying that we're including it in the annual plan, but we are including it in the consultation?
Yeah, that's fine.
Is that,
The problem with that is that it leaves that open to interpretation, that it could be rejected from the consultation, and the point of this is to give security that the local
Okay,
share
yes.
is there, and that we will work on the details of it, not that it's up for debate.
Understood,
in
yeah.
that.
perfect.
No one else has put their hand up, so I'll just say, from my point of view, I understand the anxiousness, the hesitation around this, but I think if we have the ability here to facilitate collecting that rate, but capturing the 7.5 million from government, then I think it would be silly to turn that down. And so today we have that option, and so for that reason I will be supporting the motion. Councillor Van Beek, you're okay?
Similar, this is such an idiotic situation that we find ourselves in, and the only reason I support it is because we need to get these people out of 2C into 1. So that's the only reason, but hopefully we'll find a better way than actually what is being proposed here.
Great, thank you for that. Councillor Williams, you've still got your hand up, or you?
Yeah, I do. I did want to speak. I still don't understand why anyone can claim these works would be held up by this decision. Well, put it this way, I do not understand, other than optics, or perhaps I could use a stronger word, why we need to send the rates bill, and not Hastings District Council, to the very same people. I literally don't get why we're being put into a position where we're suddenly the critical path to these works happening or not, for a scheme we don't own, for works we're not going to do, and to ratepayers that are literally Hastings District, period. I don't get that. Maybe someone can explain that to me ahead of the annual plan next year. But I can see you're all keen to get this community protected, and I totally back that. But I'm not sure I'm going to be able to vote in favour of this at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Back to you, Councillor Sears.
I think it's been said, and I support your comments, Chair. This is really about moving on and offering security to our communities and securing our funding arrangement. There's nothing really more to be said, I don't think, from my point of view.
Okay, thank you. We'll take the vote. All those in favour? Say aye. Against? No against?
I'm against.
Okay, 1. Okay, that's carried. Thank you. I think that's all for today. And so we'll call the close of the meeting. We have a couple of workshops to go after lunch, so lunch and then start back here at 12:30. Thank you. Is it? Yep. Cool, thank you.
Once the meeting's closed, I'll make